Okay. Okay, good morning. It's 9 o'clock. I'm calling the July 10th meeting of the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority to order. We have a quorum. Do we need to do roll call?
No, ma'am.
Okay, we have a quorum. Are there any public comments?
None received.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the next item, adoption of minutes for the June 12th, 2019 meeting. We have a motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to item number 3, discussion and action on the following board resolutions as they relate to the Pelicano Drive project. A, authorizing the chair to execute an amendment to the interlocal agreement with the County of El Paso for the provision of additional funds. And B, authorizing the executive director to execute an amendment to work authorization number 3 with CEA Engineering Group for additional design services. And to make it easy, I'm just going to unmute all of the mics so that I don't have, so so you can speak and be heard without me trying to figure out who's who.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
But just so you know, they're on. Okay, do we have a presentation?
No, ma'am. No presentation today, but I will be briefing you on this item. So as read into the record, the Pelicano Drive project is on the agenda today as items 3A and 3B. This project is one of the 2013 Comprehensive Mobility Plan projects, which is a partnership between El Paso County and the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority. This particular project is in design phase. As with all of our Comprehensive Mobility Plan projects, in order to access the vehicle registration fee funds, the County of El Paso has an interlocal agreement with the CRRMA, which provides us access to those bond proceeds. So the item under 3A is an amendment to that original interlocal agreement to provide access to additional funds for the RMA. These additional funds are being added to add additional engineering services, including additional traffic control, which relates to a revision of the phases for the development of this project, additional survey, and additional temporary traffic signals that were added to the project after the original design was developed. So what you see then again is under item 3A, you see an amendment to our interlocal with the county whereby they are providing additional funds to the RMA. Then under 3B, it's an amendment with our design agreement with CEA Engineering Group to provide those services that were requested. Additional information include the original agreement, the original interlocal with the county and the RMA had a value of $1.9 million. We're adding $101,228.31 through this amendment. So the total new amount is just over $2 million. So subject to your questions, I would recommend approval of both items 3A and 3B. Of course, we have a representative from CEA here with us today, as well as our general engineering consultant, should you have any technical questions.
Are there any questions from the board? If not, I'll call for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Moving forward then to item number 4. I'm scrolling down so I can see the whole thing. Discussion and action on the following board resolutions as they relate to the Vista del Sol project. A, authorizing the chair to execute an amendment to the interlocal agreement with the County of El Paso for the provision of additional funds. And B, authorizing the executive director to execute an amendment to work authorization number 27.5 with Atkins North America, Inc. for additional inspection and testing services.
This item is similar in that this is a comprehensive mobility plan project as well. So what you see under item 4A then is an amendment to our interlocal with the county for this particular project to increase the funding in the amount of $300,000. I should generally say that these amendments relate to additional design services as well. The specifics are additional inspection and testing services. That's what you see under item 4B is an amendment with our to our work authorization with our general engineering consultant, Atkins, to provide additional inspection and testing services. The reason that we have to do additional services relate to delays on the project that are due to delays that were related to relocation of petroleum lines, as well as it took a little bit longer than anticipated to receive a temporary easement from a private developer in the area. So those delays added inspection and testing services. So under item 4A, then you see an amendment with the county for an interlocal increase in the amount being provided through vehicle registration fee funds. And then under item 4B is the amendment with our general engineering consultant team, which is going to provide those inspection and testing services. I should have mentioned under item 3, but item 4 has also, of course, been reviewed and approved by the County of El Paso. So subject to your questions, I would recommend approval of items 4A and B.
Any questions, comments? If not, I'll call for a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Moving forward then to item number 5, discussion and action on a board resolution authorizing the executive director to execute supplemental work authorization number 5 with Dannenbaum Engineering Company, El Paso LLC for additional design services for the East Lake Boulevard Phase 1 project.
So this amendment is strictly, this is also a comprehensive mobility plan project, but we do not require an amendment to our interlocal with the county because that original interlocal agreement has sufficient funds to cover these additional services. As read into the record, this one is seeking additional design services from Dannenbaum for this particular project, and that is due to there was some survey work that was not originally included in the design scope, and there's also additional traffic control services required for a detour that was added later related to the storm drain crossing a main street. We have a representative from Dannenbaum here should you have any questions, as well as our general engineering consultant. Otherwise, I would recommend approval of this item.
Any questions? Call for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Moving forward, item number 6, presentation, update, and discussion on change orders recently approved by the Executive Director for the 2013 El Paso County Comprehensive Mobility Plan. I'm going to mute while he presents.
Good morning, Madam Chair, board members, and Edgar Pino with the GEC. I have a PowerPoint presentation to show you. You could pull it up. Oh, thank you. This is the 2013 El Paso CMP recent change orders. We have 2 change orders that were approved by the Executive Director, and then no change orders that require board action. The first project is on Vista del Sol. This slide here, change orders 1 through 6 have been presented to the board at previous board meetings. The same thing with 7 through 11. Anything in green has been presented to the board previously. Change orders 12 through 16 have been presented to the board. And we are at change order number 17, which was a relocation of a wooden post and electrical meter and the demolition of a luminaire foundation. The change order cost was $24,129.53. That brings and that's for VRF funds, as far as this change order, which El Paso County did approve. The total amount for change orders for VRF funds is $255,561.74. And El Paso Water total change orders for the project are $115,612.78. Percentage-wise, VRF funds we're at 5.58% of the contract amount.
Please. What?
As far as if you look at that the last row right there, the total change order amount. As far as VRF funds for this project, we're at 5.58%. As far as the $255,000 total change orders.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
any other questions?
Any other questions before we move on? Okay.
All right, the next project is East Lake Phase 1. Change orders 1, 2, and 3 have been presented to the board. The same thing with 5 and 6. Number 4 was pending, and that was for potholing the gas line on Vista del Sol for a total cost of $25,505.03. This was approved by the county and approved and signed by the executive director.
Any questions?
Yeah. Excuse me, what is potholing a gas
It-
line?
There's, the gas lines are underground as far as what El Paso Gas, or Texas Gas has out there. And there was conflicts, there were potential conflicts with the gas line with our contractor's equipment. So it's a soft dig hole as far as going X number of feet. You dig it slowly to make sure if you do hit the gas line, you don't damage it. But well, we call it soft dig. You just dig a small little hole, 3 inches, 6 inches, as far as going into the ground until you hit until you see the gas line. And then we survey that information as far as putting the information as far as where X and Y, Z coordinates, as far as identifying it, and then we show it on a plat. And then we meet with the contractor we meet with Texas Gas to make sure, hey, are you comfortable with these numbers? And then we meet with the contractor to let them know where the gas line is and how deep it is. Because we're excavating in some of the areas as far as building the roadway. And then also the equipment, since it is rather heavy, Texas Gas has concerns as far as the weight, as far as whether or not the gas line can handle that type of weight with coverage. They expect usually 2 foot of coverage as far as dirt or backfill. And that's what we were trying to determine as far as how much room do we have in regards to protecting that gas line.
It's really just a way to become more confident as to where the pipelines are. That's really the point.
A 3-inch hole? What do you do, a teaspoon or?
No. You drill it down. You drill into the dirt. As far as you have your cores and your bores, and you go into the dirt area.
Any other questions? Thank you. That it?
Yes, ma'am.
No action required?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item number 7, presentation and update on the El Paso streetcar project, including discussion and action on a board resolution authorizing change order number 6 to the rail vehicle contract for remanufacture of PCC cars with Brookville Equipment Corporation for the provision of certain equipment training.
This one is a little bit different. This is really an update to the board on this project, but also it identifies a change order, and at the back end I will ask for board action for approval for that particular change order. But today we have with us Gil Gardner, who's part of our general engineering consultant team. He is the construction manager on this project, and he will brief you on progress.
Good morning. I'm Gil Gardner, the construction manager for the El Paso streetcar, and I am pleased to be here this morning to present to you the El Paso streetcar project closeout, at least for these 2 contracts. It's been a long 3 years and an absolutely enjoyable 3 years. Our agenda today is I want to give you a little bit on the project progress, a discussion on change order number 6, as Mr. Tejas brought forward, discussion on project documentation, where we are, warranty and punch list items that the contractor is working on and finishing up this week. We do have one other project, a SCADA progress, SCADA, that will be coming before the board here the next little while. I'll discuss that and then answer any questions. As far as the progress, I am pleased to say that we are 100% on everything. The MSF building, civil and track, water, sewer, Father Rom improvements, which was part of CBD 4. We took that on. The Cincinnati improvements, which was, what was the city contract under Cincinnati improvements?
I don't remember the
I
title,
don't either,
but
but,
it was
you
a,
know,
it was a separate
that was
project.
added on, and then the storm drain improvements under El Paso Water Utilities. The vehicle progress, all 6 PCCs are 100% complete, have been delivered, and are under revenue service at this point. Description of that, for that, just to go over, you guys, I've told you this several times, but kind of a wrap up. It's a 4.8 mile circulator loop with 2 loops, kind of in a figure 8 loop for both uptown and downtown. It's a fantastic maintenance and storage facility. It's occupied and it's under operation right now. The activity for the project, if you recall, we gave the contractor notice to proceed on the infrastructure October 2015. He basically wrapped up all of the work in December of 2018. Then we completed testing and startup, was essentially completed in 2018, and we turned over beneficial use, or turned over the system for beneficial use to Sun Metro, and they actually started revenue service in November of 2018. As I said, the infrastructure project construction is complete. We've prepared draft letters of acceptance, submitted them to the city engineer for review and concurrence. They've been reviewing, concurring it. Unfortunately, Sam is out of town this week, so we don't have any letters from him, but we expect them momentarily. The city concurring at that point will then turn it over, issue final acceptance letters to PD&T, and close out the contract completely. The 6 PCC cars have been restored and are in operation, all 6 of them. The project duration of that started in June 2015 and went through June 2019. We just wrapped it up, this last point. The first vehicle began revenue service in November of 2018. If you recall, we had the groundbreaking ceremony here on Franklin. The vehicle manufacturer is complete. The city engineer's office has issued concurrence for final acceptance, and CRRMA will issue a notice of final acceptance for all 6 PCC vehicles to Brookville shortly. On change order, that kind of leads us in. One of the reasons they haven't issued it is we do want to process change order number 6. Change order number 6 was for some training on the Brookville re-railing equipment, which had been covered under a previous change order. It got delivered. However, the Sun Metro team says, we have no idea how to operate this system, the re-railing equipment. So what we did is we went with Brookville. They arranged to have training done, brought it down, and this covers the RailQuip training cost and the Brookville facilitation and support. They really went in, worked with them. Interestingly enough, before I go a little bit further, if you recall, I think it was on my last presentation, whenever we showed the pictures of the vehicle that got derailed because of the baseball there at the baseball stadium. Fortunately, the staff had gone through the re-railing training and were able to get the vehicle re-railed and back on. We didn't know that a baseball could cause the vehicle to derail, but it was right there on the curve, and it just kind of moved it over about 2 inches. But anyway, they did, not only did they go through training, but they even had some practical application of it. So the change order was to provide the Sun Metro with training on the operation safety of it as requested by Sun Metro. They'll coordinate the class with RailQuips trainer and help facilitate the class at the MSF. And this agenda item will seek a board approval of that one. On project documentation, we've closed out and electronically transferred all documentation to the City of El Paso, including the TxDOT local government documents and the state safety oversight documents, as-built materials, as-built drawings, and everything. So they now have everything. We've also set up 2 employees from the City of El Paso to access all documents and project-wise, which we've used to maintain the document control system, so they can have access to it until such time as they have their system all set up. On the warranty and punch list items, the contractor's in El Paso this week to close out the storm drain final punch list items. They'll be here this week and next week, finally get those closed out. And then once we complete the final punch list items, then we'll have the issuance of final acceptance. Siemens, who is a subcontractor, will be in El Paso in early August to do some warranty work on a traction power substation. This won't have any effect on our closeout because it's all under the warranty work. Under the SCADA, as you recall, in one of our previous meetings, we had a discussion on the SCADA, the supervisory control and data acquisition system. It's going to be procured with the remaining funds. Currently developing the technical specification procurement. It's about 75% complete. We've submitted it to Sun Metro for their operations people to review and give comments on it because we want to make certain that they're satisfied with it, that we don't surprise them with something that they didn't feel they had input on. They don't necessarily direct us because we have the budget, but we do want their comments on it. I'll be working and finishing up the commercial terms of it, working with the CRRMA attorneys to finish up the commercial terms. Once that's all complete, then we'll go out for a procurement, probably under goods and services because of the nature of the product. Anyway, that's it for the El Paso streetcar system. It is now up and running, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have, as long as my voice holds out.
Any questions? Yes?
No, just a comment. I'd like to thank you. I've worked with you for 3 years on this project, and you always answered all our questions in very simple English for us non-technical personnel. So thank you for the job you did for this, for the RMA. I think I speak for the other board members also.
Thank you.
I must tell you, it has been my absolute pleasure to have worked here on this project. It's a fantastic project. You guys are a fantastic group of people. I've enjoyed every minute of it. And it's an outstanding way to kind of complete your career, to have a project of this nature. So I really appreciate you letting me work for you. Yeah. Anyway, but that's it.
Carla?
I have a question for Raymond on this. Okay, all the dollars, all the leftover dollars to the penny, everything is gone and given to somebody and
Not yet.
not yet.
So let me summarize conceptually what we're doing here. So as you know, for the last 3-4 years, we've been coming to you with quarterly reports on the progress of the project. So this is the final one for that. When you look at the project really consists of the infrastructure side, which Gil broke out, and the vehicles. So those two are wrapping up. Those two contracts with the contractors and the consultants for those two activities are wrapping up. Now there was remaining funds of just shy of $500,000. And those funds are now going to be used for the procurement of the SCADA system that was referenced before, and some other minor things. So there's a separate procurement that we'll be pursuing here very soon, and you all will obviously approve that, so you'll see that very soon. But the real project, when people refer to the streetcar project, that's the infrastructure and the vehicle, those are wrapped up. we've burned down those expenses. And we're going to be closing out those contracts very soon. But the remaining funds that you're asking about, those will go towards the SCADA system, and whatever's left, we've got a kind of a wish list that was developed with Sun Metro. And I think we briefed the board on that maybe a couple months back. I can pull that up and share that with you again. But it identifies SCADA as their priority number one. And then, for example, they've got electric gates that would open to allow the streetcar out of the maintenance and storage facility. They've got a few other items like that if SCADA's, and if SCADA doesn't use all of the remaining funds, then we can move on to the next item and continue to go down the project wish list until we zero out the grant funds. So that's our intent.
Did we not approve the authorization to move forward with the use of the funds for those purposes?
Yes, ma'am.
I thought
Yes,
so.
the procurement, I believe, has been approved, so we will issue that. But obviously, any contracts and that sort of thing have to come back to
Sure.
the board.
Do we administer the expenditure of those funds all the way till we zero out the bank account?
Yes, sir, because the grant was from TxDOT to the Regional Mobility Authority,
Okay.
so we have to manage all of that. Now, as mentioned by Mr. Gardner, we are obviously coordinating very closely with Sun Metro because they're going to be the ultimate owner, so we don't want to develop something that they can't or won't use. So we're working with them, but we are the grantee.
Thank you.
Mr. Wardy?
One more question. Can you remind the board just what the fee was that we charged as part of this project to manage this entire thing over 3 years? You got any ideas on that?
It's about 60 a year.
So it wasn't really a direct fee. It was based on Raymond's time and taking a portion of his hours and charging to the project. I think a lifetime to date, we've made about $250,000 out of the 97 million or so. But I think the first year was like 52,000, then it was in the 60s, and then depending on how long the project goes, we'll continue to charge.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? So on a personal privilege, even though I wasn't part of the RMA when you oversaw this project, I was intimately involved in securing the funding to do the project and do the initial work so that we could draw down the dollars that were available from TxDOT. So I am really grateful to the RMA for agreeing to take this on and see it through, even though it was somewhat controversial. It probably still is. I do believe that it's a great project for this community and will reward significant benefits both in the short and longer term. So again, thank all of you for doing that.
Thank you. And then if I could, a couple more items. So since this is the final quarterly report, we've passed out a couple of commemorative coins related to the project. We've got plenty more if you're interested, if you'd like to share some with friends or otherwise family. So we have those coins. We also developed a microsite, which will be linked from our website. I was hoping to have it up today, but it's not quite up yet. So I'll send an email out. It's a nice brief summary of the project, not only the project, the construction project, but streetcars in El Paso, when they ended, all the different attempts that the city had to begin to restart the system, and then how we got involved and how they were brought back into service. So as soon as that's up online, I will, of course, send it out to the board and to our email list as well. So this is, again, the final quarterly report on the streetcar project. However, there is an action item on this one. As mentioned, there is a board resolution related change order number 6 on the PCCs. So subject to your questions, I would recommend approval of that particular change order.
Any questions? I'll
So
entertain
moved.
a motion. We have a motion.
Second?
Second. All in favor? Thank you. Okay, next, moving on, just item number 8, discussion and action on a board resolution authorizing the executive director to extend the financial advisory agreement with Hilltop Securities, Inc., formerly known as First Southwest Company, LLC, for 1 additional year.
Good morning, Robert Suter, Director of Finance. We actually took this item to the Finance Committee on Monday. Basically, we're asking to extend this agreement for 1 additional year. It was originally a 3-year agreement, started in July of 2015. We extended it last summer for a year, and we have 1 final extension available to us to go for another year. Because the contract will be up, we will then be going out probably in the early spring in a procurement for financial advisory services. But we ask and request your approval to extend this agreement.
Any discussion, questions?
So move. Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 9, presentation, discussion, and possible action on the following reports for the third quarter of fiscal year 2019. A, general financial activity. B, investment report. C, El Paso Bike Share Program. And D, general engineering consultants team's use of local resources.
Good morning, Robert Suter, Director of Finance. So I'm going to be with you for these first 3 items. First, we have the third quarter financial statement. As a reminder, these are numbers provided by the City of El Paso as our fiscal agent. They're preliminary and unaudited. We have 2 trustee accounts. We have the Spur 601, and we have, Spur 601, and we have the VRFs. We only have 8 months of those 2 instead of 9 because of the timing. We don't get those statements until after the city has closed its month. So for instance, the city just closed July yesterday. We haven't even received the statements for those 2 accounts yet, so there's no way to get them in the period that they occur. I'm sure you're aware our funding is irregular and not cyclical. We're a very unique organization, and our funding reflects that. And then we are reliant on the city to get these numbers. So we're going to first discuss the third quarter highlights. We're going to have a couple slides on our statement of net position. And what you should have in your backup as well as a paper copy of it, and we can make that available to you and as well on the website, but we've broken it out so it's a little bit easier to read on the presentation. We'll have 3 slides on the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position, 3 slides on detail by fund, and then we're going to take a look at the operating budget, which was requested by the board the last time I was in front of you with this item, and then what we're going to expect to see during the remainder of 2019. So during the third quarter,
I have a quick question.
Yes,
What is our fiscal year? Is it October 1 or September 1?
September 1. We match the city since they're our fiscal agent. Yes, ma'am. So during the third quarter, we actually closed out the Cesar Chavez project. You'll recall that the board took action in August of 2017 to move to close that out. We had to pay TxDOT a final invoice, and we did that during the third quarter. You may also recall during previous discussions that there was an O&M loan that was taken to help operate that during the early years because it would not generate enough revenue. The debt from that has been closed by TxDOT and shifted over as part of their contribution to the Border West Expressway. Raymond, I think, talked about that at the last board meeting. So you'll see that on the financial statements as a gain on the refinancing of debt, basically, as that debt is no longer on our books. During the third quarter, we also made a $15 million payment on the Border West Expressway. You'll recall we got $500 million originally. We've now expended all $500 million of those dollars, and all we have left is interest earned over the lifetime of it. One thing the city does a little bit differently on the streetcar is that they recognized our revenue at the end of the year instead of as we spend. So we've actually spent about $4 million year to date on the streetcar. That shows as a loss right now, but we will recognize that revenue at the end of the year, especially we'll have a couple remaining payments as the vehicles close out and that milestone is achieved by Brookville. We'll make payments to Brookville as well, and so that will wipe out what on paper looks as a loss right now. We'd have around $80 million of construction work in progress for the streetcar. All of that's going to be transferred to the city by the end of this year. We may have a little bit left depending on what happens with SCADA and some of the wish list items, but we're going to shift that over to the city's books as a capital contribution by the end of the year. And then just kind of a accounting cleanup thing is we've worked with the city for the last few months, and we're changing the way that we're accounting for the city's TRZ, which they use to pledge to cover a SIB loan taken out by the CRRMA to go do projects, and we're just changing that accounting, so it may look a little weird on here and in future reports, but I wanted you to be aware that we're working with the city to change and true up our accounting so it's a little bit cleaner and better. Okay, so statement of net position. What I'd like to show you here is that last line is the total assets. We started the year with about $100 million more in total assets. As we spend down the Border West, as we pay off some of our debt and receive payments, those no longer are receivables, and so we've spent down about $100 million either in money coming in and then going out to cover debt or in paying for the Border West. But that's expected as we move throughout the year. As you'll recall, we got about $600 million between streetcar and Border West, and we're spending that down, so that's planned. On the next slide, we're looking at liabilities. Those also were, I think, about $100 million more at the beginning of the year, but as we've paid down some of our bonds, we returned funds on the SIB loans. Those are also going away for us, and so we're spending money. I want to highlight Border West. We are recognizing the income throughout the years we go, different from the streetcar. So far it shows we've received $35 million. That was just deferred revenue that we've now recognized as we've paid out around $35 million so far year to date. Above that, you can see some TxDOT projects that we receive money in as grants and immediately spend it out within a few days. And then we've got bike share revenues on the top, and then a little bit of toll revenue that came in related to the Chavez project as people still have outstanding money on that. And then the 2 lines below the red highlight is reimbursed expenditures. $3.5 million of that is that gain on the retirement of debt on Chavez that's been flipped over to the Border West. And so that's where that appears on the financial statement. I know we have our operating expenditures. Again, that red highlight is good. That means we're spending VRF funds, we're spending Border West, and we're spending streetcar money. And to date, we spent about $52 million on those projects just on capital. We've also on the professional services, the third line of about $3 million. That includes some design and engineering and oversight as well. But that's good news. So kind of wrapping that up, it shows we've have an operating income loss of almost $14 million. $4 million of that is related to the streetcar, and we'll recognize that revenue at the end of the year, so that'll shrink that loss, but a loss is not bad for us as we're trying to spend down our money. And then when you add in the transfers that are related to how the city pays us TRZ money, and then we go and pay the debt on the SIB loans, that wipes out a little bit of that loss. So year to date, we've lost about $11 million, but that is not unanticipated, and frankly, we'll continue to spend down money as the year moves forward. So now we're going to have it by fund. This, I've got 3 things highlighted in red for you. The first one in the second column is reimbursed expenditures, since that's not detailed by project, and I apologize that the edges of the screen are cut off a little bit. We're receiving money from the county on the O.T. Smith project. They pay us, we pay out to the vendor. We've got an agreement with them. You've approved several other agreements, including for airport projects with the county, the Fabens Airport. Those will be probably categorized the same way. We'll get paid from the county and then pay out to Atkins on those projects that you've approved as well. But we don't have a separate line item for those. In the toll fund, that the fourth column where the smaller highlight is, the $3.5 million, that's the gain on the debt on Chavez that's been forgiven and shifted over to Border West contribution. And then in the big red is the big red highlight or circle is just a reminder that we only have 8 months of data on our trustee funds. So that was revenues. This is expenses. In that red circle, you can see on the bottom row, the capital, we spent almost $13 million related to the VRF projects. That's really good news as we're spending down those funds and getting projects completed for the citizens of El Paso County. And then lastly, you can see that same thing again with the trustees funds. And then on the far right is that $11 million loss that we've had so far year to date. So last time I was in front of you, you asked me to bring a little bit more detail on the operating fund. So right here we've got our revenues and we've got the budget in the second column, and in the third column our year-to-date actuals, and then what percentage of the budget we've actually collected. So the first line is our interchange subsidy, our BAB credit, our Build America bond credit that we get as part of the SIB loans that we took out. We get a percentage of the interest, and we receive that. So we take it, half of it gets applied to save money on the loan. The other half comes to the organization to help support our operations. So we usually receive that during the fourth quarter, and so we'll keep an eye out for that, and hopefully I think receive that this month. That's about half of what we expected to receive this year. The next row is the portion of the principal that was issued with the par amount that was issued on the 2 VRFs. We're perfectly on track to receive that. That's $103,000 that we're receiving each year right now. That's for each of the first 10 years of those bonds. Salary reimbursements are low right now. We just had $52,000 in salary reimbursements post in June, and we'll have more. I expect that we'll actually finish the year over $100,000 in salary reimbursements. That's good news. Spur 601 we receive as part of the 2 payments we receive, the pass-through tollways to make the debt payments. We get a little tiny bit of that, whatever the remaining 0.01% of the outstanding balance. So it's really shrinking on us fast as we look to pay that off. Project admin fees, I've got it in there and there's no activity, and you may be wondering why. During the year, you approve projects like those county airport projects, like O.T. Smith Hike and Bike Trail. Part of that includes an admin fee that we will receive. We usually don't receive that till the end of the project, though. So I'm not sure we'll receive any of those this year, but we will expect to have around $250,000 in project admin fees already planned to receive in FY20. So that's good news. As those projects are approved, that means revenue coming in as we take a little slice of that for our time. Interest income, we've made around $21,000 year to date, and then reimbursed expenditures, we had a little credit with TML on our insurance, and they gave us a little money back. Expenses, as a reminder, almost 2/3 of the budget is personnel costs for Mr. Tejas and myself. We expect to finish right on budget with those 2 salary and benefit items. Our CPA costs trend a little higher in the spring when we're doing the audit, but they've slowed down so far. Legal costs we only have through March. We just got our April billing and I think paid that. With legislative session going on, those are higher costs than in prior years. We expect that. It kind of, one year it'll be low when there's no session going on. The next year when there's legislative session, it will be higher as we're paying. We had tramway bills that we were involved with, and so those costs go up during the legislative session. And then we've got a little bit of travel. Mr. Tejas and I both attended the Texas Transportation Forum in January. He had some visits to go visit our state delegation and then actually testified on those bills related to the tramway, and so he had trips to Austin. And then we expect to finish below budget at the end of the year. I don't think we've ever exceeded our budget, but we're definitely going to finish underneath it this year. So for the remainder of the year, we're going to transfer the streetcar infrastructure and vehicles over to the city. We're going to make debt payments in July for Spur 601 and in August for the SIB loans number 2 and 3. We're going to hopefully complete the Border West Expressway construction, and then we're going to continue working with the city to clean up activity. And as a reminder, as we spend down these funds and our total cash position decreases, that's a good thing as we're spending money and building roads and other projects for the city. I talked about we only had 8 months of data for our trustee funds. When I was in front of you last time, I think there was a question about the VRF and are we on track to make enough money through vehicle registration fees to cover our debt. Well, the May activity is not included in here. So if you go back a couple slides, you only show that we have about $4 million in vehicle registration fees that have been received. That's because May is not in there. When I was speaking to you in February, I said usually there's one big month. And we don't know when it is. We don't get a payment on the 1st of the month or the 15th or the last day of the month. We kind of get county payments maybe every 3 weeks, sometimes every 4 weeks, sometimes it's just not regular. So I wanted to bring this in front of you to show you that in 2017 there was a huge March. In 2018, January and April were really big. In FY19 we had 2 payments over $500,000 each, and May was really, really big. And so we are on track to cover, in fact, we can cover our debt service with this payment, but just kind of show you the irregularity of how that vehicle registration revenue comes in. It is in no way, every year May is the same, the bigger month. It doesn't work that way. So I just wanted to provide a little visual aid to you to help you see that. And I will take any questions you may have.
Any questions? Yes?
As far as covering our administrative costs as the RMA, from what I've been able to gather from everything I've seen and what you've said, is that you charge each particular account based on the hours that are attributed to that particular project?
Not exactly. On some projects, yes, we attribute time. Some projects, we just have a flat fee of 3% that we agree to with the county or the city. So for instance, Wynn Road is a project that we're doing with the city. We agree to a 3% fee on the cost of that project. Some we do use time, 5% of Raymond's salary, 25% depending on the size of the project and how much he's committing in his hours to that time. or to that project. But on some projects, it's just a flat 3% fee. On some of the big bond issuances, you've seen we've kind of got, weird percentage of the outstanding balance. Some of the, we just have a flat fee on the VRFs. So it's a little bit different, but we cobbled together revenue from different sources.
And I think if I could expand on that, that's exactly right. It depends on the project, the funding source, the entity, and that sort of thing. So projects that we develop for or with TxDOT, they prefer and require hourly. So that's time, my time. On the bond issuances, we link our fee to the original par amount or the outstanding principal amount, depending upon the structure. And then all the subsequent projects for the city of El Paso and other entities, those are a percentage based. So it really what drives it is the funding source ultimately.
Okay, well, it appears to me that the issue of trying to keep up with hours dedicated and all that kind of stuff becomes an administrative nightmare in a lot of ways, and that items such as the flat fee and those kinds of things appear to be the most efficient way to do that. So what you're saying is the hourly charges are because it's a TxDOT policy, is that correct?
Correct.
Is that a state policy, a local policy, or a legal policy, or
Honestly, I'm
by
not sure.
statute, or?
I'm not exactly sure. I can check with them, but historically, since day one, we've had an hourly arrangement with them. But I can find out if we can tweak that, play with that. I'll ask.
It just appears to me that that's pretty cumbersome. I mean,
it's really not that bad, but I agree with you. The percentage is a whole lot easier. You know what that is going in, and there's no question. But I can certainly ask.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair, one question. And I understood you to say there was $21,000 in interest revenue. And what is that on?
That is on just the operating funds.
So
our agency,
how much was, on average, was with the agency that drew interest?
so the city created 6 bank accounts for the RMA a little over a year ago. I'm not sure we have the correct amounts. We've got a little bit of issue between what is on paper versus what is in the bank accounts. We also have to use that account to transfer money to the city. So while we may have other bank accounts, for the most part, we get paid from TxDOT. That sits in there for a couple of days, and so we may get a big payment of $400,000. It sits in there for a few days, along with other payments, and we pay it out. So we had quite a bit of
So
money
there's
in hand.
some income when the funds are just in transit? There's
Yes, sir.
some
And
income.
we don't hold on to those funds for a
Understood.
long period of time, but yes, we do end up holding on to them, and we will
And
earn
so you
interest on that.
accrue some
Yes, sir.
interest revenue
Yes.
from that? Okay. All right.
And
Thank
we
you.
are going to talk about that next on our investment report.
Okay.
So I would ask that you make a motion to accept the financial statement report.
I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
Second?
We have motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
I might add, thank you for that VRF clarification, because that was always a little bit hard to nail down inside the simple brain cell.
Yes, sir. We're going to try and think of some other ways to visualize some things, hopefully, but I hope that visual helped. And if it didn't, let me know, provide some feedback, and we can fix it. So I'm excited to present to you our investment report for the first time ever. Just a couple disclosure ahead of time. Numbers are preliminary, unaudited. It's activity only from March 1st to May 31st, so the third quarter. And then there's a statement that we have to put in here that meets the Public Funds Investment Act. I'm gonna just give you a little bit of a reminder, go through the investment performance and wrap up. We did again take this item to the Finance Committee on Monday, and there's a more detailed report in your backup that we'll post on the website. In the future, though, we'll probably just provide this either via email, and I'll tuck a summary in the quarterly financial statement. As a reminder, in May you designated me as the investment officer for the board, and you authorized trainers That's an important thing. I can't just go get training from anybody and say, hey, look, this works. You actually have to authorize certified trainers by the state. So you took both of those actions in May. In June, I actually attended training through the University of North Texas's Center for Public Management in Arlington, Texas. They have sessions there quite frequently. Now that I've taken that, I'm good for 2 years. And ideally, they come out here once every 2 years, and I'll just attend that in the future, along with other people from the local area. Although I will mention that someone from Socorro Independent School District was also at the training that I attended. And then something from the Act itself that I wanted to point out is investment of funds shall be governed by the following investment objectives in order of priority. So first is the preservation of and safety of principal. Number 1 rule, don't lose money. Number 2 rule, liquidity, have money on hand, pay your bills. And then we're going to look for yield. So very low risk type investments are what's authorized by the Act, and the idea is we do not want to lose any of our funds. So I've got 5 rows here with that summarize where we have our money. The first is that our accounts that are held by the City of El Paso. The second is SPUR 601, and I have to present it by the bank, but I want to tie it with the projects that you are aware of it. Third is the Bank of Kansas, which is where the Border West Expressway money resides. Fourth is the BNY Mellon, where our VRF1 and our VRF2 money moves in and out of. And then the last one is Citigroup 2, which is where the VRF2 funds are really residing, and that was done to help us achieve a little bit more yield on those. But it's a very liquid thing, and we basically call down the funds, they get sent over to BNY Mellon, and we're good to go. So at the beginning of the quarter, we had $94 million. At the end, we finished with $84 million. As again, we're paying out on projects. We paid out on Border West, we paid out on VRF, so we call those dollars down, pay them out. We're not earning interest on them anymore, but we did earn $373,000 during the third quarter in interest or investment revenue. A little bit of a market update. The S&P 500 today crested over 3,000 for the first time in its history. I think it dropped back down not long after it did that, but that was interesting news, a new all-time high. The Fed may cut rates at the end of this month or at the end of August. If they do, that will hurt some of our investments, as I imagine the banks where we hold our money will not pay us quite as much interest on that. And then as we spend down the dollars, we obviously have less invested, and so we won't make as much money. In fact, a quick aside, the Border West, right? We have $500 million that we received 4 or 5 years ago. We made more money in the last year on that than we did in the prior years because interest rates rose so much. Even though we had less money in the bank, interest rates were so high we were making more money on a monthly basis on those dollars. So that's been a good thing for us. And then as I mentioned earlier, future investment reports we will either email out, I will email out and then also just include probably that summary slide in the quarterly financial statement as well. And I will take any questions you may have.
Any questions, discussion?
How do we spend the money we make?
So some of it is tied to the project, and we have to spend it on the projects. Money that's held with Wells Fargo through the city, that money, the streetcar, I think has to go towards the streetcar. We have the money that is with any of our other accounts, toll proceeds, bike share, our money. Border Highway West, we've made around $4 million. That's going to be spent on the project itself. The VRF funds go back, I think, towards the VRF program to be used on projects. So it's our money, we can spend it. If it's project money, it's going to stay with the project.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you.
Would ask for
We
your,
need
just a motion to
action on
accept
that?
the report.
Okay, so
Yes,
I
ma'am.
entertain a motion to accept the investment report.
So moved.
Have a motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Moving forward, item 9C, El Paso Bike Share Program.
All right, my last one, I think I've already been up here longer than all the other items combined. So we won't sprint through it, but we won't take too much time either. Could I get the presentation, please? Oh, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the third quarter activity for our bike share program. An agenda, we're going to talk about the summary of activity. We're going to look at some program highlights. We're going to go through some charts of time and day usage that you've been receiving since the beginning of the program, and then we'll talk about the finances a little bit. So Second to last column, we've got FY 2019 third quarter. You can see in the rides taken that we had 4,712 rides taken. If you look back one column, that second quarter, we had 1,600. So almost 3 times as many rides from March, April, and May than we had December, January, and February. A lot of that's attributed to weather, but this is known. This happens every single year. Second quarter is usually not very good for us, and then the third and fourth quarters are great, and so that's almost 3 times as many rides. I will also point out that same first row, the last column, the 49,401 rides, so we hit our 50,000th ride during June. That's just a cool milestone for the program to hit. We had our busiest May ever, and I'd also like to say we got early numbers from June. We had our busiest June ever. So you may be wondering, hey, how's the program doing now that El Paso also has scooters? Well, we've had record months, May and June, over our prior years, so it's really good news. Sunday is now the most popular day. This is definitely a recreational activity. We don't see a lot of commuter usage. It's recreational, so Friday, Saturday, Sunday are our most popular days, and Sunday is now the most popular. Again, evenings are the most popular. We'll show you in the charts, but more people ride between 12 and 2 than ride between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. Just a little interesting. San Jacinto, by far our best station, is doing gangbusters. I mean, that is a workhorse. Frankly, we'd like to expand that potentially if we can. We're little limited by the footprint, but that station, there are times when Caesar will tell us that every bike is checked out on a Saturday night, and so he's trying to go pull bikes from other stations so that he can get them, other people to check them out, as there's a line sometimes for people to check out those stations. Several of our other stations are doing well. Pioneer Plaza, we had to remove. As you'll recall, there's a plaza, hotels being done. There's a new parking garage that's being built. Well, all of our stations are solar powered. That parking garage eventually was going to get tall enough where it was going to block our solar power, so we were going to have to move it. Before we got to that point, though, the contractor called and said, hey, we got to run an electrical line. You need to move this station out of the way. So we've picked it up and pulled it out of the field, and we're working with the city to relocate that hopefully very soon. We're gonna try and keep it in the same area because Pioneer Plaza was actually our second busiest station, but we are working on some things to try and improve San Jacinto, maybe put a station nearby that we can direct people to. New stations at Madeline and Kern, although I'm not sure I'd still call them new, are performing well, and then we had a couple of special events. We usually have maybe 2 of those a quarter. Where somebody comes and rents out some bikes from us. So again, just to point out that we had 4,700 rides, which was really great, and our biggest May ever. You can see here on that top graph, it's not pretty smooth day by day. We really peak on the weekends, and so those spikes that you see are Sundays and Saturdays and Fridays. Most rides are pretty short, 2 to 3 minutes, 30 to 60 minutes. Here's where you can see Sunday in the red box is really the biggest day by far, and then to the right of that graph, Friday and Saturday are the next biggest. And then the bottom graph shows you that time. So on the far left-hand side, you can see at midnight, maybe 150 rides, but if you go to 7 a.m., 8 a.m., 9 a.m., virtually no one's riding it. It's a very social activity. People are coming down, going on dates, riding, hanging out with friends. So through our third quarter ridership, so just March through May, was up 5% over the prior year. Again, May was a record month for us in the month after the scooters launched. Some of our stations are definitely experiencing growth. San Jacinto, man, I cannot believe how strong that station is. And then Pioneer, we're relocating. Year-to-date ridership's just slightly below where we were last year. Our second quarter was really rough this year, and so we're still trying to catch up from that. And then we're launching e-bikes. Last night, in fact, we put a few of them out into the field, and we're going to kind of test those out before we go full launch, just so we can make sure we learn some quirks about them and figuring out how long it takes to charge them and picking them up and keeping an eye on them. So then we'll go to a full launch a little bit later. But right now, we've got our e-bikes, a few of them out in the field. A couple of them right next to us at City Hall.
Okay.
So if you want to go look at one of them afterwards, they're right outside at the City Hall station. Finance-wise, again, we started with some capital dollars. We've spent a lot of that down. The 3 quarters for FY19 are at the bottom of that chart. We are slowly spending down our funds. We're looking for sponsorships, and we're really pressing on that to try and get some sponsorships here very soon. So switching over from a ridership issue to revenue, revenue is actually doing well. We're ahead of where the yellow line for the current year. And then below that is the 2018 line is that light purple. And so we're a little bit ahead on revenue, even though ridership is behind this year. May just be a couple extra fees, the $2 if you ride over the 30 minutes, you don't return it. But revenue is still doing very well. And that's all I have for you.
Is there any plan to expand outside of the current zones?
Yeah, so I don't know about outside the current zone. We do have the relocation of Pioneer Plaza that we've submitted to the city and has to go through their process. We're also looking at adding a station in Oregon and Franklin, which is just a little bit north of San Jacinto. And we would hopefully direct some people there so that they can ride those. Mr. Tejas has done some meetings with some neighborhood associations, and we may look at adding a station up Rim Road, Scenic Drive area and see how that performs. So we do have some thoughts on some possible expansion. And I'd defer to him if he has any other comments.
That's right. I mean, ultimately, we've been asked by a couple of different neighborhood associations if we'd be interested in locating in parks and that sort of thing. So we're exploring those options right now.
Has there been any analysis looking at maybe down along the Paisano corridor once the border highway is done and that becomes more of a local thoroughfare?
No,
or like up in, I'm trying to think what street it is. Where the police station is, Montana and that area.
5 Points area
Yeah, 5
around
Points, I
the other
can't think of the
house.
name.
We have looked at that a couple of times. The issue with that area is that it would essentially become an island unto itself because it's so far from our current zone. So the idea is currently the plan is
Like
to
go
kind
like
of
this?
right, exactly,
Okay.
as opposed to creating a whole new node that Caesar would have to head out to. But we have looked at it a couple of times. We looked at it with dockless at one point. So now with e-bikes, we're really anxious to see how the e-bikes, how the riders use the e-bikes, because you can get a whole lot farther on those bikes, a whole lot
Okay.
faster. By way of example, we had as a demo, we had Representative Schwartzbein hop on one at the bottom of Stanton. He rode up all the way to the top of Stanton with no issues. So it shows you these bikes have some power with them. So we anticipate seeing them going further out. And I think ridership will help us determine where we're headed next as well.
Okay, thank you.
No action needed, but I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Caesar for all his hard work, and he and his team do a great job. So I just want to mention that as well.
Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions or comments? All right, thank you. Next.
The final item we have is our regular quarterly report from our general engineering consultant team. They provide updates on their use of local resources here in El Paso. So we have Edgar Fino from Atkins to provide that.
Morning again, Madam Chair, board members, Ed Garfino with the GEC. If you could pull up the presentation, please. All right, this is the General Engineering Consultant Team resources. On the agenda is the labor expenditures data, a graphical representation of data, firm summary, and questions. This is quarterly summary for the GEC. We're on quarter 41. They're at the bottom row, February 2019 to April 2019. Local labor for the quarter was $709,667.13, which is 88%. And our non-local labor at 12% was $92,556.51. That's for quarter 41. This is a quarterly summary GC as far as the line graph. The line graph as far as local quarterly, again, it's the orange line there at 88%, and the line graph for non-local quarterly at 12%. Local labor, again, is the bar graph there in yellow with $709,667.13. This is for the quarter as far as the quarter 41 with the same figures that were on the table. This is the yearly average summary, and since we're in the first quarter, the line graph there, the gray one, is local quarterly at 88%. A new percentage there as far as the cumulative is the red line graph. Cumulative, we're at 62%. And then the bar graph as far as the yellow, local labor, again, that's the same $709,000. And the purple bar graph is at 92,000 since we're in the first quarter. And the last slide is on the firm summary as far as each of the firms that have worked as the GEC team member. Any questions or comments?
Any comments, questions? Is there any action required? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any items for executive session? Okay, so that's it. Call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Great meeting.
What time do we have on that?